Yes? Can you hear me?
No, it's all right.
It's okay. Yesterday we had a panel which was completely diverse. 2 women, 2 men, and 2 men not wearing socks. So you can see from this panel that it's completely and utterly indiverse. They are all men.
And all wearing socks.
I think I've
No
got
socks.
I've got no
there you
socks.
go.
So we've got 20 minutes. They're all awesome. I've spoken to them all. Start at the end, young man. Tell us who you are. 40 seconds. Everyone introduce himself, and let's get on with it.
Yeah, Conor Murphy. I'm from Ireland. I'm in Berlin. I work with Techstars. Techstars is a worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed. I'm the managing director of the SAP IO program in Berlin, focusing on B2B SaaS and machine learning startups. Last year we had a great company here from Bulgaria, GTM Hub. So we love the Bulgarian ecosystem. It's my 4th year here, and delighted to be here again.
Thank you, Marvin.
Name is Marvin. Nice to see you all again. Partner of 500 Startups. I run the San Francisco office, partner in the main fund, and also run the accelerator program and invest all over the world.
Ennis.
My name is Ennis. I'm also with 500 Startups. We have a fund dedicated for Central Eastern Europe and Turkey. So we do investments into the region, hoping to build global companies. And we use 500 Startups network and the expertise and Marvin's team in order to do that.
Thank you.
Hussein, I run an early-stage venture capital fund in London called Hoxton. We do early-stage tech investing across Europe.
Raf, Startup Bootcamp. Startup Bootcamp is a global accelerator. We have 25 programs around the world in various different locations. We've helped 600 companies so far, and I'm especially focusing on IoT based out of London.
Okay, thank you. Hands up in the audience who is actually an entrepreneur or who has a startup. So quite a lot. Do you, hands up who know what early investment and seed investment is? Well, that's all sorts of what I'm talking about. So that's my first question, completely ruined. The thing I'm probably going to go to you, Marvin, because you are representing North America today. I believe that the idea of early investment and seed money is very different, or the amounts raised are different in the US to Europe. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, generally speaking. So I think what you're seeing, at least in the US versus in Europe, is that there's usually a lag time of actually trends in general, right? So there was a huge, we were talking about this earlier, there was a huge influx of actually money coming to the seed stage, probably I'm going to say like late 2009 through to like 2015, and it's ironic that actually now it's probably easier to get seed money in Europe than it is to get in the US right now, mainly because what has happened is with all the money that came in, there's still the same amount of investments actually happening at the Series A, so you're seeing a lot of companies actually just dying off. And I think the other thing that's actually happening too is that there are a lot of funds that were raised, most of them suck, and the ones that have actually done very, very well, they actually end up are able to raise a lot more money later on, so they've actually moved up to Series A, and so there's actually a huge gap, at least in the US, for seed.
So that's a trend, right, which is interesting. But the average seed raise in Europe and the US, what's the difference?
Average seed raise in the US, what is considered a seed round will range between $1 million to like $4 million, which is kind of insane. Yeah. And I think in Europe it's probably about like maybe 1 to 2 million.
500K.
Yeah, 500K to maybe like 1.5, 2 million.
Okay. So Europe has an opportunity because, well, why was it this sudden kind of surge 2010? There were successes earlier that regurgitated into the system.
I just think like there were a lot of changes in the ecosystem overall. So the cost of actually doing startups have dropped 1,000 times, right? And so this emerging area, then you have like players, as we talked about earlier, like First Round Capital and Soft Tech and other players have actually shown that actually this is actually a very lucrative area to be investing in.
Right, okay. So great chance for Europe. We've got Berlin in the corner and London. What do you think to that?
Yeah,
Berlin?
Well, I think from a Berlin perspective, I'm only in Berlin 4 years, and just from a venture perspective, when I arrived, there was no VC funds, there was no seed funds necessarily there. I think Early Bird were the only people who had an office there that I can think of right now. And then in the last 4 years, I mean, so many funds coming into just Berlin. I think then on a seed level, like London is obviously, I think, the heartbeat of that. I think you have the EIS and SEIS. And you have amazing tax incentives to be an angel investor in London right now. And I think, so it's definitely, Europe seems pretty healthy at the seed stage, particularly led by London.
But would you say that the kind of subsidies maybe that London received that have created a false kind of ecosystem, whereas Berlin has just happened kind of naturally, or is that a myth?
Well, Berlin is a third the cost of London. So I think if you're at seed stage, you're naturally going to have more seed companies there. I think if you're focusing on B2C, if you're focusing on where you're not focusing on revenue, you're focusing on product innovation. Maybe early on you saw companies like Wunderlist and SoundCloud in Berlin. I think being here in Sofia, it's half the price again of Berlin. So you're very cost constrained at the start. We want to get some traction. You're kind of self-incubating. I think cities like Berlin or Sofia are doing quite well. Compare that to San Francisco, the cost of just even living and getting basic rent in San Francisco. I think it's a great place to scale and raise much more capital. But at the seed stage, you're really bootstrapping or leveraging on angels. So I think you got to think about that.
Stand up for my city. Stand up for London.
Come on, give it up.
I think London.
It's expensive, right? But the rest of it is fucking awesome.
It's actually really cheap compared to San Francisco these days, and there's less poop on the streets.
There you go.
But London, I still think, is probably the dominant ecosystem in Europe, just because that's where everyone aggregates. The place that's actually catching up really fast is Paris and France.
Yeah,
I think Macron has tried really hard to put France on the map when it comes to the tech industry. There's a ton more money. Capital raisings are easier, I think, in France than they are in the UK right now. So that's the one to watch in my mind.
And there's unfortunately a massive drain of talent because of Brexit, right? And it really is a thing that we are losing great people from London. It's really happening.
Yeah, the uncertainty just doesn't help, right? I mean, the simplest thing you can do for a startup economy is keep things stable, right? And when you try and pull the rug out underneath, it just makes stuff more tough.
Be interested if California succeeds from the US, how you get on.
The Tim Draper plan?
Rafe, you wanted to say?
Yeah, just like, I think what's happening actually, both on the side of London and Brexit, I think it's not diminishing what London is about. It's more about redistributing and actually implying the pie that we had. So to our point earlier, there's a lot more money going to Europe in general now. It's being redistributed because Brexit, means that EIF is not going into London anymore, but BBB, Bank of Britain, is actually pulling back. So there's putting on. So there's a lot more money going in various different ecosystems that are allowing the whole thing to grow. So Paris is one that grows really fast. Berlin has been growing and it's now extensively growing. You'll see other regions that are growing. And you look at this region, it's incredible what's been happening over the last few years.
Yeah.
So it's actually a better redistribution. It's growing the pie rather than just reducing it.
I went to Detroit about 3 years ago to see a destroyed city, and I saw an amazing start-up scene because people had moved from San Francisco. There was a guy that had regenerated the Madison Theatre.
All right.
So you're only allowed to have four employees. As soon as they had 5 employees, they moved. That became the Madison block, and then Twitter moved in, and places, weird places. I mean, crypto, Zug, Switzerland, and all those type of places. Yeah. Okay, maybe going off the topic. So accelerators, to me, is just a word that I keep hearing all the time, like blockchain, crypto. It's just, have we reached peak accelerator in this? Are there too many? Well, some are closing down, right?
I only know one 500 startups. It's
You
by
lie.
far the best one. I just heard about Startup Bootcamp. So there are a lot of accelerators in the US and also in Europe, but I feel like the landscape is different in US compared to Europe. In Europe, you see a lot of publicly funded accelerators, so it's really tough to actually make an accelerator model work financially. So there's also a big turnover, accelerators opening up and shutting down. US is much more an established market for sure. Like 500 Startups has been around for 8 years. YC has been around for more around 12, 13 years, I guess. For companies that are looking to soft land to the US market, especially from this part of the world, for a Bulgarian company who wants to grow to the US, I think going to an accelerator is the right way to go to make a soft landing, have the right connections, and then generate some traction from the market. And that's what we're trying to do as 500 Istanbul.
Okay, all right. Thanks for telling us all about your company. Yes. How about in general?
Advertising.
Well, this is not an advertising panel, dude.
I mean, I'll answer. Let me answer the question. Just like, are we at peak accelerator? I hope so. I doubt it though, because you see so many corporates like the checklist of like, how do we innovate? Let's do an accelerator badly. Yeah. They do it for like 1 or 2 years, and then they end up killing it off when the new CEO comes and goes, why are you wasting money on this thing? And nothing good is coming out of it, right? So the reality is that I still think it's going to continue for a while, but I also see that there's a lot of churn actually in the accelerator business. Yep. Because the reality is that most of them are just not very good.
Yeah, no, I agree. Rafe, you had an interesting idea earlier about the way that accelerators different. I mean, 500 Startups has been the model. blah, blah, blah. But, you know, and it takes a long time to make money, you know, early stage, takes a long time to get your money back. But you were saying that what you've been doing, or what companies or accelerators like you are doing, so you have a slightly different approach to it.
We're not going to talk about.
So we're not going to talk
I'm not
about
talking about me. You're going to
company,
say it's under product placement, right? So I'm
no,
not going to do that.
absolutely. You have to be very careful because I'm sitting next to you.
So on the back of what Marvin was just saying, what we're seeing is not dying. It's an evolution of what we've seen over the last 10 years of accelerators, right? So early stage funding is now pretty well established in some regions that are getting totally saturated and mature. But on the other side of the world, you've got places that have nothing yet and needs to be supported. So, you know, yeah, what we've done at Startup Bootcamp is we are investing in areas that are not necessarily the place where it's not London, it's not New York, it's not San Francisco, it's not even Paris. It's, you know, we went to Australia and places there was nothing. We went to, you know, South Africa. We went to Dubai, which is, you know, extensively a lot of money, but there's not much startup ecosystem. So we're helping, and that's what you guys, Start 500, have done for years as well. It's helping those young ecosystems grow by enabling those guys. So that particular type of ecosystem, and it's probably very true for Bulgaria as well, is an early stage. It's a good stage for having an early stage classic accelerator model.
Right, okay.
Now, when you go to mature environments, they need the next step. They need the scale ups. They need the scale model that helps them get to the next level. And that is then, you know, what most of us do now. You either have capital and you invest as a seed fund or a late stage fund, or you do some of the things that we've done, which is we help having scale programs, and that's targeting Series A and B companies, which is a completely different.
So you're preparing them for the next stage.
Correct.
Late in the early stage.
And we do then things that most people don't. Well,
Thanks. You can come back for that. Cheers.
Please do come back to that.
Yeah.
We also do that with the help of corporates, but we don't wait for corporates to sort of destroy the company. We make sure that they can work together.
Which is brilliant segue straight into Connor, because we were talking earlier about corporates getting involved in this, and maybe that is also maturing after some early setbacks.
Yeah.
You're getting the CEO of, you know, a corporation getting involved.
I think when we talk to corporates, it's like, well, why are you doing this? And I've heard answers like, well, we want to recruit talent. I'm like, that's not why you want to do an accelerator. I'm not going to turn up as a CEO with my team and you can start picking people off. Or my friend is doing an accelerator over here. Why? So the why is where you have to start with the acceleration. I think then when you look at that, I think it's like, then how do you source those companies and how do you translate and talk to them? So we almost position ourselves, well, my personal interpretation of how we did it with Texter is almost like an API between the startup of 10 people and 85,000 people over here, speaking different languages. Fast means 6 months, fast means 6 hours, and just being that broker between the two of them to help connect both ecosystems, in that little buffer zone between the two of them. So, you know, Mike Suster has a great blog saying both sides of the table. I think when you bring in a corporate accelerator partner like Texters, you have 3 sides of the table, and we help actually manage that quite well. And going back to growth and trends, we're seeing that trend. Yes, I think a lot of corporates dipped their toe in, did it kind of half-arse and did it barely.
Absolutely.
We grew 38% last year, and a lot of that growth is with corporate partners who've kind of, you know, why are they doing that? A public company used to last for 40 years, now they're lasting for 15 years, and they got to become a distribution partner into their customers and be closer to innovation. They don't know how to do it. They've realized it's important. So the CEO level is behind it now, and they're putting millions of dollars behind it, which we're seeing this next wave of maturity and corporate acceleration.
Which is refreshing, right? And
Yeah.
that's great. Ennis, I was mean to you earlier. I'm going to give you a chance to get your reputation back.
What?
I'm going to help you now.
Help
Can
me.
you tell us about Central Europe? So we've got Paris well, we've heard about Paris, we've got London, we've got Berlin, clearly San
Can I
Francisco.
speak about Turkey as well?
Yeah, I'd love you to do that.
Put some
yeah.
Turkey inside it.
But if you kind of see that Turkey and Central Europe in my ridiculous, as the same area,
Sure.
What's going on?
So I think Central Europe is different than Eastern Europe. In Central Europe, there is more of an abundance of capital, so we see more investments happening. But we see more opportunity in Eastern Europe compared to Central Europe. Turkey is a different story. Turkish story is the market was booming, a lot of capital was poured in. Market didn't do that well, so there's not many international investors investing in Turkey anymore.
and
So
the crash of the lira, right?
Yeah, lira. What was lira? It's done. But yeah, so our thesis is that from Eastern Europe and Turkey, there should be global success stories coming out, and that's the only way to bring capital from Western Europe or the US into this region. I actually call this the population paradox. I believe there are these big markets like India, China, US, where almost every single vertical is venturable. A lot of these big companies come out. Then there are these mid-markets like Italy, Turkey, Spain, where a lot of the verticals that are venturable in the US are not venturable in places like Turkey. Then there are these tiny countries like Bulgaria, Estonia, Israel, where people have to be global from day one.
Yeah.
So they be global and then they create these giants, which is the thesis that we're betting on. Coming back to your question, I see more potential in Eastern Europe compared to Turkey in terms of building global businesses, both from a capital perspective, just because they have more outside traction coming in.
Apart from 500 startups, what's the kind of state of play for accelerators in the region?
In the region,
You're seeing competition. You're seeing.
first of all, we don't have an accelerator in Istanbul, so we only do direct investments. Some companies that we invest in, they can go through our accelerator in San Francisco. In the region, we see some good accelerators that we work with. I believe EIF is doing the best efforts to be able to build better accelerators that are going to be there for sustainably. Startup Bootcamp was in Istanbul, which I thought they were the leading private program in Istanbul. They left a year ago, which was sad. But I think more.
Why did you leave? Why did you leave?
Yeah, why did you leave? I never got to ask that.
Off the record.
We haven't left.
You haven't left.
No.
Oh, good.
That's all I can say.
You're just sleeping, dormant.
That's on the record.
Okay.
To be continued.
Now you got your answer. We've only got 5 minutes left, so I think we've got a pretty focused audience of entrepreneurs and people that would need some advice. I imagine that most of the people here are local. We'll do it in kind of reverse order. Over to you, Connor, again. What would your advice be for Sophian startups? What would you say they should do? Should they get into an accelerator? What should they do?
Like, the short answer is I don't know. But I think, like, what I've seen here, I've been coming for the last 4 years, I tell VCs when I meet them in Berlin, the three most exciting places in Europe where I see so much energy and optimism and professionalism and scale. I often talk about Sofia, like it's the Telerik mafia. I'm sure half this room is part of the Telerik or part of that mafia. I think there's great connections there on the back of that, and like you see what's even happening at Campus X, and you see the ecosystem effects that are happening with training 4-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds. What's happening there? I predict in 20 years when I land here something called Telerik International Airport because of the impact that Zarko and everyone's having on the ecosystem. I haven't seen that anywhere else in Europe.
Right,
So
okay.
I'm going to be coming here more and more, and I'm greedy looking to find brilliant teams that I can maybe help through Berlin or anywhere else in the ecosystem of Techstars. But I think Techstars ultimately wants to come here as well. But I think whatever is happening in this ecosystem is great. The ambition is here, the success is here, and I think keep doing what you're doing. Everyone sees the problems, but I come in externally, I see so much opportunity.
But I'm looking
here.
into buying a flat in Sofia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd totally get a flat here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's awesome.
I was asking.
And that's not just bullshit.
I was
that's
asking
true.
where's the best place to live last night. I was like, people are at the base of the mountain somewhere where the breeze is better. But I think it's great here. So I don't have any specific advice other than keep doing what you're doing and the ambition level. And I think as you do get some traction, entering new markets, whether that's through an accelerator or they're very focused on US capital. I think you see companies like Lean Plum, which is has Bulgarian roots and Techstars roots, raising 100 million, coming back here doing an R&D center. So more of that, and that ambition, I think, is proliferating down to more of the founders here.
That's a very good point, actually. Marvin?
I've been coming out here, at least involved with the startup ecosystem here, probably for over 7 years, and I would definitely sort of, I would have a parallel comment to that, where I definitely see the changes over the last while, and in the right direction, not in the wrong direction. Things are definitely moving in the right direction. I think my biggest complaint, and I said this publicly as well too, I think I never have any questions about the tech talent here. I tend to have more of the questions on the commercial sales and marketing sort of like skills, and I would really strongly advise you to spend more time on that. Right. And also the other thing too, just like think bigger. Like the entrepreneurs I meet here, like super smart. You're just as good as the folks I meet in Silicon Valley as well too. But I think you have your own sort of like mental, the ambition of just like there's this barrier, and I think it's a self-inflicted barrier, just as good as a lot of the folks I meet, and so they need to sort of get past that.
Also an excellent point. Ennis, being closer to the region.
I think there are many advantages of the region, being the tech talent and the cost, and there are disadvantages like what Marvin said in terms of commercial, sales, and marketing perspective. I think an entrepreneur should try to hedge those, so internationalize the company. If you're going for the US market, if you're going for the UK market, try to hire someone from that region and kind of have an international perspective as a company. That also changes the culture, and then you can actually take care of those disadvantages much more easily.
Okay, thank you. From the best city in the world, London?
Yeah, so The best global city. Yeah, I would reinforce.
The best British city.
I would reinforce what Marvin said. Is I think what I've noticed here is people don't aim big enough. I think the ambition level here could rise.
So you're matching Marvin's comments.
Yeah. So I see a lot of folks are focused much more on niche products and much more on local products versus kind of global products. And then the other thing is I think you have to build global links. And so if you're here, what you said about other geographies, particularly Israel, right, which does it, I think, phenomenally well, is you have to build a bridge back to predominantly in California.
I would probably put them a bit higher than we mentioned earlier in the conversation. Absolutely. Rafe?
They've all said it all, but just don't be shy. Reach out, get outside. Just get out there. Just come to us, any of us, and try to reach out to get bigger, global, bigger, bolder, and better.
Okay. And I think a conference like this doesn't help. Doesn't hurt.
On this?
And on that note, I think this conference is awesome. I'm not just saying that. I might buy a flat in Sophia. I just said that. I've learned quite a lot from you, all of you gentlemen, in diverse as you may be. A round of applause for my panel. I hope they gave you some value. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.